Hello and welcome to another great edition of TEARED Show. This is a show that seeks to inspire you and to motivate you as we answer the big question, why education? We get to get up close and personal with our guests as they share their personal stories. On today's edition, it is not different. We are joined by Dr. Andile Dube, who is from UNICEF as the Education Manager in Quality and Systems Strengthening. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sibongiseni.
Such a great pleasure to have you. We've been meaning to have this conversation and think I'm so excited that finally we are going to get to talk to you.
Yes, it's been quite some time. COVID has not been very friendly to us. We had to keep to ourselves.
Yes.
I'm also glad that we are finally having this conversation.
Awesome stuff. And let's get straight to it. Could you just share with us a little bit about your upbringing? Because a lot of us see you and see the work that you do, but we don't understand how did you get to where you are. And for somebody that is like you, so big in the education space and has made so many strides in the education sector, you had to start somewhere.
Wow, Sibongiseni, firstly, I'm just very humbled by the mention of being so big in education, because actually in education, no one is big. In education, what you do with others. If you
Yes.
can't do with if you can't work with everyone else in the sector and collaborate, then you are as tiny can be.
Sure.
But back to my upbringing, I was born in KwaZulu-Natal, born in a township called Umlazi,
Yes.
and that's where most of my childhood was. But we also had a home in a place called Folweni. Folweni is further south of Durban. It was a rural place and it was turned into a township. And so that's where my upbringing really lies. It is a poverty-stricken environment. And yeah, for me, I think the idea of the village raising a child really is central to my upbringing. So
Sure.
if I'm talking about how I grew up from primary school to high school, Big Temba Umlazi, Bavumile and Okwini Umlazi, what has been always been common is how all my family members collaborated in raising me, but
Sure.
how the schools played a role and how our community members played a role. I mean, during my time, you wouldn't be out of school without Ubabuntuli from the neighbor's house asking, why are you at home? So I think basically that is me growing up in a poor environment with extended family members. My parents, one staying in Kwamashu, one in Port Elizabeth.
Sure.
But just being supported like a child that needs to transit from school to the world of work.
That's amazing, because times have changed now, because like you mentioned that it takes a village to raise a child, but not in this generation. You see a child roaming around the streets as an adult, trying to ask them questions, they're just going to look at you and be like, who are you? So would you say that living in the times in which you grew up, the village that you lived in was so supportive and so involved in what you wanted to do, and then that helped you to become an independent woman who says, I want to make the better for myself?
Definitely. I think that is very true, that we do not have that community involvement in raising other people's children. And of course, there are pros and cons about that. You still want our children to be safe. But the idea of community gathering to raise their own is quite important. I
Yes.
think during our time, that's what really helped. Even when our parents were not around, we knew that there are still elders
Yes.
around, and we knew that we can still feel safe around. So we do still call for communities in our programming to rally around school as a safe environment, but school as a community node, and that which will provide change for the children who exist in that environment.
Sure. And did you ever think that you'll become an education manager, especially in the big and prominent position that you have? And I say big in big capital letters because you're in quality and strengthening, system strengthening, which is, I think, a focal point that is so important in the education space.
Yeah. No, I actually never had thought that I would be working for the UN. I never thought that I would work for the organizations that I've worked for. But I've always known that I want to make my life better, and I've always known that I want to wake up one day and be able to experience the world that has changed for me,
Yes.
and to break out of the cycle of poverty. But if you ask me if I knew that I work for the United Nations, no, I would have never have thought about that.
Now, for someone who has, what do you do? What is an education manager? Because maybe when we understand that better, but someone is watching there, they're like, quality, system, strengthening, what you do on day to day.
So on day to day, I do a number of different things. But I think at the heart of the work that I do is the commitment to providing quality education to the children of South Africa. So everything I do, I have to think about how is it going to contribute to quality provision of education, whether it's the child who's in foundation phase or is in high school.
Yes.
And for my colleagues who work in ECD, it will be how they invest their time in working in the ECD. So we have to provide guidance or technical support to policy, to strategies, to programming, and interventions that will improve the life or the performance of each and every one of the children in South Africa, particularly children from the poor schools, which we call in South Africa, quintile 1 to 3, the no-fee paying school. So my job is to say, this is the international goal,
yes,
as linked to the SDG 4, and these are the South African priorities. How do we, as the UNICEF, enable or support the government in order to enable those to come into play? Whether it is in the numeracy, whether it's in the literacy, whether it's mental health, whether it's anything that has to do for care and support for teaching and learning, whether it is the nutrition space. So it all comes back together. I think
yes,
the premise in the job that I do is you need to have a conducive environment for learning to happen. And then you have to improve the curriculum
sure,
component of the work. If you pull all of those together, the quality of education is likely to improve, and the system is likely to be strengthened. And so that's what I do every day. It's quite a nice job,
beautiful.
right?
It's a nice job because
Yeah,
you
I
get
know.
to,
They still pay me for it.
you know, they say you must, for you to live like a king and to enjoy life, basically, and not feel like you're working, you must do what you love.
Yes.
And that's absolutely
Definitely,
what is
yeah.
happening with you.
Yeah. If only they knew that they can just do it for fun and not be paid, but don't tell.
Your boss might be watching. Talking about this work, what has been some of your highlights that you guys have done as an organization, you know, in impacting these schools and communities?
So I would say everything about our job is a highlight, because
Yeah,
everything that we do, if it changes a life, or it influences or it improves a life, then it's an aha moment. During COVID-19, we did a lot of work to first ensure that the system is supported to provide resources for learners who would rather not. And
sure,
so for us, for me, that is an aha moment. The ability to be able to say, right at the peak of COVID, what is it that we can do and do very quickly to make sure that we provide for those children. But the second one is the work around ensuring that children are protected from COVID-19, but they are also protected from all other social ills,
sure,
whether it's child abuse, whether it's any environmental issue that will affect the child. So for me, those are the aha moments. The third one is seeing everyone working together. That is always the aha moment for me, because I believe that as the practitioners or as the experts, no amount of input would work if you are not working with the others. And in education, where there are so many needs, you really, really need to work together. So when I see people getting together to work and put the child at the center of the work that they do,
sure,
it's always an aha moment.
Wow, that's so beautiful indeed. No man can exist as an island.
Yeah.
What are some of the partners you guys work with, talking about collaborations, and how do they impact in the work that you do?
So firstly, we serve the Department of Basic Education. Whatever we do has to contribute towards the strategy of the department and the plans of the department. And so we will always work together to serve the Department of Basic Education so that they are able to serve the children. And some of the partners that we've worked with partners like National Education Collaboration Trust, which creates platform for collaborations in the sector.
Yes.
We've worked with organizations that provide mental health and psychosocial support like Childline. We're working with organizations that provide infrastructure for water and sanitation, and they build hand washing stations. We work with MIET, who provides comprehensive sexuality education, and SRH. We work with, of course, to enable Castor Bridge and provision of programs for young people online or on digital platform. We work with organizations like Siyavula that has enabled the provision of digital content to children who are in high school, another very exciting program that helps us reimagine education. We work with organizations like University of Pretoria that actually has been part of the work that we do around providing for the youth, particularly the not in education, employment and training youth. The majority of young people who are at need or unemployed. We work with PricewaterhouseCoopers in developing some of the programs. There's a number of organizations. We actually try to make sure that we enable or we provide an environment for collaborations between the public sector, the private sector, and particularly the academic institutions. And it all creates a good picture for the children and the youth.
I like that, and it speaks to what you just said earlier on about having the child being at the center of what you guys do. What is the role of parents and the community in this, and what do you think still lacks?
There's a number of things that that we need to deal with. In 2021, when there was civil unrest in KZN, and some of the places that were distracted is schools.
Schools.
So if we are asking about what can parents and communities do, there lies the first solution. We need to safeguard and protect our schools as these assets that provide opportunities for our children. In fact, for children who are poor, the only way that they will break out of the cycle of poverty is through accessing education and quality education. And so if as communities and parents we are not protecting the environment that will provide that for the children, then we are a challenged society.
Failing.
So firstly, let's protect the schools. Secondly, each and every parent, we need to be involved in their children's education. We know also that sometimes we say parental involvement, but parents do not know how they should do this. And so as the education sector, it is upon us to guide parents around what community involvement, parental involvement mean, what it mean to participate. I would give you an example. My son will perform and behave at school because he knows that I'm a call away, and he knows that if the school calls me, I'm going there.
Sure.
And so parents should create those environments for their children.
Be present.
Yeah, you have to be present, you have to be available, you have to show interest on your child's education, but you also have to show the school that you are actually very interested in your child's education. And in cases where, as a parent, you do not know how, you reach out, and the organizations that work in the sector are likely to assist you to begin to participate. So what is important for parents and communities is involvement, is knowing what is happening, is helping the schooling system to ensure that they deal with discipline, they deal with performance, they deal with attainment, and they feel that the school is protected because the community and parents are committed.
Yeah, I think in what you say, I need to bring it personally for people that are watching and may not know this. I do follow you on socials and some of the work that you do, and I can really, really attest to it that you are so involved in your children's education. I'm going to expose you a little bit. I saw a post that you made a couple of weeks back where you just shared about your son going to buy books. And it's something that's rare, especially in our Black communities, where as parents we encourage our learners to read. And it could be because of socioeconomic factors or any other reasons. But what is your urge to parents that are watching, especially in encouraging their children to read?
I would like to say to parents, you don't have to be educated to help to encourage your child to read. Just encouraging your child to read to you and to make available the resources is the biggest way, it's the main way of making sure that children are able to read.
So basically, like as a parent, sorry to interject, you could just say to your child, read to me this newspaper and tell me what they are saying.
Yes, definitely. Children, I used to see my grandmother reading a Bible every day.
Yes.
And so that is reading.
Yes.
And so because as parents, you also read your religious book, whether it's the Bible, it's all of the religious books, you need the children see you read. And so that also encourages children to read. My children see their grandmothers reading. So my mom will read a very old newspaper. And so when they see that happening, they should be encouraged. My mother-in-law is constantly reading. And so children see that and they have to be encouraged to read. And for parents who can afford to, you can link reading to incentives. My son knows that he will never get any incentive unless he finishes a book. So we need to get to encourage them in every way that we can to just read. It doesn't only help them with the schoolwork, it helps them imagine. When I used to read as a child, I was introduced to countries that I'd never been to or countries that I'd never seen on the map just because I read a book. And so for children, that is what reading does. Parents need to be able to encourage their children to read. And njalo umntanakho umbonisa ukuthi ukufunda incwadi kubaluleke kanjani kuzomsiza kanjani kodwa abone na ukuthi interested in their reading. So that's why I get my son to read. But it's also quite interesting that when he's broke, he reminds me that he needs to read so that he can get more pocket money. And so it works both ways.
Sure. And I must say that really struck a very good conversation and inspired a lot of people. There's some parents that commented actually on your post saying, you know what, I as a parent am to blame because I stopped reading. So now my children also stopped reading. So it's a very good thing. But personally, I want to ask you a big question. Why education? You could be doing other things. You could be in other sectors. I saw you even during COVID-19. You were hands-on on the ground, looking in communities. I saw the projects that you were doing as an organization, but how invested you were on those projects personally. Why?
I think education is a passion of mine and has always been a passion of mine. My dad is no longer alive, but he'll tell you that he had hoped that I'll become a medical doctor. Anyway, I'm a doctor now, but in education.
That's not a medical one.
Yes. So education for me, I feel like it is the main platform or the main strategy for children to break out of the cycle of poverty. When I think about the job that I do and developing programs for the poor, in each of those children, I see myself when I was younger.
Sure.
And I know that the only reason that I'm the person that I am today is only because of education. And so I feel if there were no people or no teachers or no champions for my education, I wouldn't be the person that I am. And so for the majority of children who are from poor environment and from poor school, they need that champion and they need education. We often say with education, your chances in life improve.
Yes.
Your chances of employment or your health status improves, your risks decrease. And so education is quite important to me for that reason. It is for the many children who are existing in rural areas and informal settlements, in poor townships, that they would be only able to get into the world or transit into the world of work only through quality education. And so for me, that is why education is so important. It is just important because I feel it is the main vehicle for transition from childhood to the world of work.
Sure.
And for being a contributing person in society, but also for ensuring that your family and yourself livelihoods are improved. And so we encourage that all children are in school. Those who are at risk of dropping out are supported through the process. And those who have already dropped out are assisted to drop back into the system and access opportunities. Because if you are outside, you might just then stay outside of the education system for a very long time, just to ensure that livelihoods are improved and social ills are decreased. We need education.
So true. But contrary to what most people see and believe, there's a lot of misconceptions about what education is and what education can do for one. A typical one is hearing that people don't want to do teaching, for example, because abo teacher ababhadala, akunamali kwi-teaching. And here you are saying in education, this could help you do better. How do we demystify those perceptions that most people have about education? And also in terms of careers, to think when we talk about education, we're only talking about teaching.
So let's start by saying, firstly, I'm a teacher before anything else. And so if you think that teaching is not a good profession, we can have an even bigger chat.
So you're a qualified teacher?
I am a qualified maths teacher. And so for me, I don't see the challenges. I don't see those issues that become a barrier having to cloud everything else about teaching. Firstly, I think the challenge with teaching is society has labeled teaching as the bad thing, but also children in school make teaching difficult for the teachers. And so if you would want to be a teacher, think about that great teacher and aspire to be like that great teacher. And teachers, unfortunately, most of them just want to do best, and they want their children to do best. But society does not actually recognize that. So if for people who say no to teaching, think about this. If you are a teacher, you contribute to at least 40 lives every day. 40 lives every day. And so if you want to contribute towards social change, that's where you should you should be. I mean, an accountant, very important job. Accountants, you sit in your laptop or behind your desk every day and you make a change. With a teacher, every day you have to sit in front of a person, a child, and make a change. So if you think about teaching, you must think about teaching as a contribution to social change. But we also have a role as would-be teachers or people who are already teachers to help influence the young ones into the system. Because if in a school that has 20 teachers, only 10 are interested or are excited about their job, the children are likely to look at the 10 that are not, and then mess up the whole career. I once said and tried to say, if I change one person's life, I just might be contributing just for that person 6.5 million in that person's life if they get into the world of work. So as a teacher, imagine if it's many of them, how much you're contributing to. A beautiful role that teachers can play, or teachers play, a beautiful role that is their task to help the child move from early childhood development to primary school to high school, and to help them with cognitive development, but with also curriculum engagement and development. How beautiful is that?
It's priceless.
It's just priceless.
Given all that you've said today and what you believe in and what you've challenged us as a nation on, if you had only one day to live, what would you like people to take out of you?
I would like my people to take out of me my passion for development and for education. I would like people to always think about children at risk and the marginalized children, to always think about how do we improve the lives of those who would otherwise not have the chances. So in all that I do, I am not thinking about my son's cohort, but I'm thinking about the children who go to no fees paying schools, who come from poor communities, who are orphaned and vulnerable, who are heads of household in those child-held households, who are raised by grandmothers because parents do not live. And then I think every child needs a champion, and so all of us, we need to be a champion of a child, and so they can take my championship if something ever happens to me or I have to live for one day. So let's all be champion for children, and let's all contribute towards the improvement of the lives of children from birth up to the world of work.
Thank you so much. You couldn't have said it better. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really inspired, but more than inspired, we are challenged to do better.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Only a pleasure. That's it from our side, from the TEARED show. This has been an amazing conversation. I've certainly been challenged, learned so much, and hearing from Dr. Andile Dube, who's inspiring in the education sector as an education manager in quality and system strengthening. They are doing so much more as UNICEF, and I think all of us have a role to play, be it a parent, be it a child, be it a teacher who's watching right now. Just think of yourself and say, what am I contributing with? If you don't know how to contribute, make sure that you reach out to UNICEF, look at what programs they have and how we can make a society a better place for all of us. From me and the rest of the team, goodbye.
Thank you.